get the guns, the drugs. From my generation, I'll take the fall, the saints, and across the nation. And it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the fraud, they're messing with me. Come on, come on, come on, let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
It's the 15th of January 1996 and there's a Monday night television battle going on between the WWF and WCW. Monday Night Raw is a taped show. The WWF are still presenting matches from their New York, Delaware recordings, while Nitro is live from Miami, Florida. The WWF will present the Royal Rumble later in the week, so this Raw is a go-home show, while WCW are gearing towards their Clash of the Champions special that will air on the 23rd of January, 2 days after the Royal Rumble and 1 day after next week's Nitro presentation. Next week then, on Reliving the War, we will have the Royal Rumble 1996 results, and then we'll have the Clash results the following week. Monday Night Raw opens up with Vince McMahon letting us know that Isaac Yankem will face The Undertaker in tonight's main event, while Doc Hendricks tells us that Razor Ramon is on his way to the arena to confront Goldust. We will also see another Billionaire Ted segment on this very show. Eric Bischoff, Bobby Heenan and Steve McMichael welcome us to WCW Nitro. Eric tells us that Ric Flair will defend his World Heavyweight title against Sting later in the broadcast, and we'll also see Hulk Hogan taking on an unnamed member of the Dungeon of Doom. As Mongo McMichael rambles on about tonight's matches, Lex Luger's music plays in the arena and our first matches are underway. Luger versus the Macho Man Randy Savage on Nitro, while we have Marty Jannetty versus Owen Hart on Raw. Let's stick with Nitro then to get things started here on Reliving the War. Luger and Savage had a great main event match a few weeks ago, so let's see if they can do it again here in the Nitro opener. As Lex Luger makes his way to the ring, Eric Bischoff announces that Randy Savage is next in line for a WCW title shot. The Macho Man will face either Sting or Ric Flair for the WCW Championship, depending on who wins the WCW title match later on Nitro. Luger grabs a steel chair at the beginning of the match, he throws it into the ring, Savage picks it up and the referee tries to get the chair away from the Macho Man. This gives Luger an opportunity to slide into the ring and begin an early attack, leading to Savage getting thrown out of the squared circle. Luger gloats in the ring, but the Macho Man is able to turn things around on the outside, and as the action finds its way back into the ring, the Miami audience can clearly be heard chanting for Luger. Savage hits a double axe handle, but it only scores him a 2 count. Luger begs for mercy in the corner, but the Macho Man doesn't listen. Lex is getting choked out while the referee tries to restore some order to the match. Savage is firmly in control until Lex delivers a thumb to the eye. The two go back and forth a little. Savage is able to drop Luger onto the top rope, and this gives the Macho Man a chance to go upstairs. Randy gets some serious air when performing the elbow drop, but Luger is able to move out of the way. The total package applies the torture rack, and Luger scores a clean win. Lex goes to the camera afterwards and he says that the total package should be the number one contender and not Savage. Luger does make a fair point here. He's had Savage's number consistently, yet he was always being overlooked when it came to title opportunities. Anyway, this match was nowhere near as good as their main event a few weeks back, but it was still okay. Over on Raw, the King of Hearts takes on the former Rocker, Owen Hart versus Marty Jannetty. Those who follow the latest wrestling news would know that Marty's recent Facebook posts haven't done him any favours, but let's just compare matches here. This won't be the last time we look at matches that feature unsavoury superstars. We start off with a little chain wrestling. Marty is able to find a way out of a wrist lock with an arm drag followed by a monkey flip. Owen complains before setting Marty up on the top rope, and for some reason, the referee stops Owen from delivering the offense, allowing Marty to jump down and deliver an arm drag takedown. Good stuff so far. Owen again gets frustrated, leading to Marty taking down the King of Hearts with a hard clothesline before applying a chin lock. The speed is picked up once again when both men get back to their feet, allowing Owen to deliver a belly-to-belly suplex followed by a backbreaker. Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler are using this match to promote the Royal Rumble entrance. It's a little distracting, to be honest. Hardly none of the in-ring action is being called here. here. Marty hits a flying crossbody from the top rope, but Owen answers with the enziguri, the same move that put HBK on the shelf, and it only gets Owen a 2 count here. Owen applies a chinlock of his own before trying to finish things off with the sharpshooter. Marty fights his way out, but Owen remains aggressive, hitting a gut-wrench suplex before Raw takes a commercial break. When we come back, Owen is still in control, but Marty begins rallying up some offense, eventually leading to Owen getting thrown over the top rope. Marty tries to suplex Owen back into the ring, but the King of Hearts reverses it, leading to Owen nailing a unique bridging pin attempt that scores him the victory. A great opening match for the WWF and a point for Raw. There was no letting up here. Owen and Marty worked well together and everything was on point. Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman were scheduled to take on Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris next, but the match doesn't happen. We get Mean Gene interviewing the Horsemen in the Dungeon of Doom instead, so we'll be comparing some promos next. While this was going down, the WWF presented a Royal Rumble report with Todd Pettengill and the short Doc Hendricks segment. On Nitro, Kevin Sullivan grabs Mean Gene Okerlund as the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen make their way to the ring. Okerlund notices that Arn Anderson is not in his wrestling gear, while Double A scolds Brian Pillman for not dressing appropriately for this, quote, business meeting. The enforcer says that the Horsemen's main purpose is to protect Ric Flair and the World Heavyweight title, and that mission will never change. But Anderson explains that the Horsemen battling the Dungeon of Doom has no financial gain. It will only lead to both teams getting hurt, and there would be no winners. Kevin Sullivan puts over Ric Flair, saying that the Taskmaster respects the Nature Boy, and therefore the Dungeon of Doom are allowing the Giant to team up with Flair at Clash of the Champions. Sullivan also puts over Anderson as the unsung hero and backbone of the Horsemen, but Sullivan stops the praise when it comes to Brian Pillman. The Taskmaster said that the loose cannon has no respect and Brian Pillman was not Horseman material. Double A tries to answer back, but Pillman gets ahead of himself, jumping around saying that the Horseman doesn't fear the Dungeon of Doom. This leads to Arn Anderson smacking Pillman across the face. The enforcer reminds Pillman to keep his mouth shut while telling Kevin Sullivan that these kind of outbursts have to stop. Kevin Sullivan then reminds the Horsemen that Hulk Hogan is wrestling in tonight's main event, and the segment goes off the air. Excellent work by Anderson and Pillman here. Brian played the part well, and it was difficult to tell what he was thinking after Anderson smacked him. Fantastic work. Todd Pettengill is giving us a Royal Rumble update over on Raw, and this is kind of interesting because Todd tells us about the very first ever WWF free-for-all show. Folks who had basic cable could tune in a half hour before the Royal Rumble pay-per-view to get a preview of the show along with a match. Todd explains that 2 participants will draw blank numbers for the Royal Rumble. Those 2 participants will wrestle each other in the free-for-all, and the winner will get number 30 in the Rumble, and the loser would end up with number 1. I know on the grand scheme of things this news means nothing, but for fans who like to look at the evolution of the WWF's pay-per-view television presentations, then this is pretty cool. We see a lot of the Royal Rumble entrance. Diesel cuts a promo saying he will win the Royal Rumble. We get to see another Vader vignette, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Interestingly, Todd mentions that In Your House matches have been airing on Raw recently, but the only way you'll see the Royal Rumble matches is by ordering on pay-per-view. Let's see if that holds true. We go over to Doc Hendricks briefly. Doc says that Razor Ramon is on his way to the building, and apparently Razor wants to tear Goldust apart. Point for Nitro here. Anderson and Pillman were great during their promo, and while it's refreshing to get one of these Slam Jam reports filled with information that actually matters, the Nitro promo was just leagues better. More matches next as the Ringmaster makes his Raw in-ring debut against Matt Hardy, while Nitro presents another debut. It's the Public Enemy versus the American Males. The American Males start off with some tandem offense, while Johnny Grunge starts off his WCW career botching an over-the-top rope bump. There's a fight on the outside of the ring, and when things get back inside, Marcus Bagwell hits a flying crossbody on both Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge. The Public Enemy are then thrown to the outside of the ring again, and yeah, not a great way to start things off here. An ECW chant breaks out in the audience as Public Enemy get back in the ring. Scotty Riggs gives Johnny Grunge absolutely nothing in the ring, and when Bagwell gets tagged in, the future Buff Daddy makes easy work of both Grunge and Rock. It's actually quite shocking how little offense the Public Enemy are allowed to get in here, practically nothing so far. This is how the match ended. Bagwell pins Johnny Grunge, but the referee is distracted. Flyboy Rocco Rock runs in and hits Bagwell on the back. Grunge performs a roll-up on Bagwell. 1, 2, 3, the Public Enemy win. Now, this wouldn't have been so bad if the Public Enemy had actually been hurting Bagwell throughout the match, but they didn't. They got in a few weak strikes and that's it. A complete disaster of a bout here. Bagwell ends up going through 2 tables after the match when Rocco Rock delivers a top rope senton, and it really leaves you with the thought that these guys couldn't wrestle for shit, but at least they could do table spots. This isn't to say the Public Enemy didn't have decent matches in ECW, by the way. The Gangstas in particular had some great bouts with the Public Enemy, but this was one of the worst bell-to-bell matches I've watched so far on Reliving the War. You know what to expect here when either Matt Hardy or Jeff Hardy is in the ring during this era of the WWF, but still, the Raw in-ring debut of Steve Austin is quite a big deal. The Ringmaster starts things off in control as expected, but would you look at this, Matt Hardy is actually allowed to get in some offense, and I bet also that Matt Hardy doesn't even win this match. Take note, WCW. Although Matt Hardy tries his best, the Ringmaster is there to shut him down. We see the famous Luthez Prez that would become a signature Stone Cold move down the road as the $1 Million Man looks on with delight. The Ringmaster brings Hardy to the corner, setting Matt's legs up on the middle ropes and giving Austin a chance to lay in some stiff punches. Austin chokes his opponent in the corner. He's dropping some hard knee strikes on poor jobber Matt, and again, it looks like Matt may get a chance to turn things around after delivering a series of kicks, but Austin stops the offense with a front suplex. The Ringmaster then chokes Matt on the middle rope, but Matt is once again able to momentarily fight back, leading to Austin delivering a stun gun followed by the $1 Million Dream. It's all over. The Ringmaster wins his first match on Raw and the WWF secures a point here. Austin versus Hardy was predictable, but still much better than that WCW tag team match. After this bout, we get a full recap of Shawn Michaels' journey towards the Royal Rumble. Shawn appears in a pre-tape afterwards, saying that he will win the Royal Rumble and his boyhood dream will become a reality. The Smoking Guns versus the Spiders is up next on Raw, along with a Billionaire Ted skit, while we have a WCW title match on Nitro, the Nature Boy Ric Flair versus the Man Called Sting. Before the bell rings, Eric Bischoff lets us know that Sister Sherry and Colonel Robert Parker will be getting married in Las Vegas during the Clash of the Champions. Can't wait to sit through that. Ric Flair starts things off by trying to tackle the Stinger, but Flair can't move his opponent. Sting is able to show his athleticism by performing a few kip-ups in a row, and Flair can't believe what he's seeing. The Nature Boy tries to buy some time by throwing Sting out of the ring, but it's no use. Sting is right back in the ring, and Flair is now begging for mercy. I started having flashbacks to last week, if I'm honest. Rick wasn't getting any offense in during the early moments of this match, but a poke to the eye turns things around. The Nature Boy is now delivering his signature chops that echo around the arena, and the Stinger sells it well. Sting rallies back, eventually hitting a giant superplex from the top rope, but Flair reverses a splash attempt by getting his knees up. Both men are on the mat as we go to commercial break, and when we come back, Flair is back in the driver's seat, moving out of the way when the Stinger tries a running attack before delivering the signature Nature Boy knee drop. Sting gets thrown out of the ring. Jimmy Hart gets a sneaky kick into the Stinger, saying, "That's what you get, baby," after delivering the attack. But the Stinger is able to turn things around with a clothesline back inside the ring. Flair reverses a sleeper with a side suplex, and when Sting reverses a figure 4 attempt into a small package, the audience felt we were going to see a new WCW champion crown, but Flair kicks out. Flair goes to the top rope, leading to the Nature Boy inevitably getting slammed to the mat, and now Sting is firing up. The Nature Boy chops are having no effect here. Jimmy Hart gets on the ring apron, leading to Lex Luger coming down and trying to get Jimmy down. Sting tries to deliver the Stinger splash, but he gets hit with Jimmy Hart's megaphone that was being held by Lex Luger. Flair locks in the figure 4 and Sting's shoulders are counted to the mat. 1, 2, 3. Flair won't let go, leading to the Macho Man and Hulk Hogan storming to the ring as Luger, Flair and Hart disappear. A good match here with a typical Nitro finish. Let's see if the Spiders versus the Smoking Guns can top a Sting versus Flair match. Who are the Spiders, I hear you ask? Well, it's Mosh and Thrasher, better known as the Headbangers. The Headbangers were working in Smoky Mountain during this time period, and they'd travelled to the USWA after working a few dates here with the WWF. They worked as the Headbangers in both Smoky Mountain and the USWA, so one can only assume that Vince McMahon didn't feel his WWF audience of early 1996 were ready to see Mosh and Thrasher. Anyway, the match presentation starts in the middle of the bout. No entrances, no announcements. The match is well and truly underway, so we do miss a fair portion here. When we join the match, Bart Gunn is trying to get the tag. The Spiders are in control. The tag is made. Bart cleans house. Billy gets tagged back in, and the Sidewinder is delivered. 1, 2, 3, it's over. It's under a minute here. It's a complete waste of TV time, and the WWF obviously felt that the airing of the Next Billionaire Ted skit was more important than the action in the ring. The skit isn't really that good either, to be honest. Ted says that he's purchased old movies and old cartoons, but he can't buy the World Wrestling Federation. Ted's advisors tell him that they are trying to buy the WWF, but Ted wants to know why the wrestling produced by Vince McMahon is better than WCW. Ted is told that his roster is filled with old, unloyal has-beens of the 80s. The Nacho Man corrects Ted by saying he started wrestling in the 70s. Billionaire Ted wants some new generation superstars, and he suggests that the huckster changes his name to the Boy Toy. It's slightly amusing, but this, along with the Smoking Guns presentation, isn't enough to beat Sting versus Flair. It's a point for Monday Nitro. More promos next. We've got Savage, Hogan and Sting getting interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund, while Goldust is going to get some mic time with Vince McMahon on Raw. On Nitro, Hulk Hogan tells Sting that the reason he isn't the WCW champion right now is because of Lex Luger, and now there's no denying that Luger is Sting's enemy. Randy Savage tells Sting that he's been saying since day one that Lex Luger couldn't be trusted, but Sting is still dazed and confused after his match with Flair. Sting got knocked out. He can't remember what just happened, and when Hogan tells Sting that Lex Luger hit him during the match, the Stinger runs off backstage to find the total package. Hogan then takes a shot at the Macho Man, and get this, the Hulkster says that he should be the number one contender for the WCW title because Lex Luger has had Savage's number over these past lot of weeks. No, Hulk, that would mean Luger should be the number one contender, not you. Hogan tries to convince us that he's been on a roll lately in WCW, but regular Reliving the War viewers would know that Hulk has been on a serious decline since Halloween Havoc 95. Yes, he was winning matches, of course he was winning matches, but his performances were getting worse as the weeks went on. Savage tells Hogan that things will be different when he gets a shot at Flair's belt. Hogan says Savage has a bad arm and he was beaten by Luger earlier in the broadcast, so again, somehow, this means Hogan should be the number one contender. The Macho Man has enough of Hogan's nonsense and he leaves the ring. Hogan tells Savage not to walk away from him and the segment is over. Remember, these two have a tag team match coming up at the Clash of the Champions also. I didn't really like this. Hogan's segments are now exercises and the Hulkster keeping himself in the limelight, and when you have the knowledge that we have nowadays around Hulk's creative control in WCW, watching this stuff back makes you feel kinda bad for everyone who had to work with this guy. But if WCW were stupid enough to give him such ludicrous benefits along with a truckload of money, then the company are just as bad. Flipping over to Raw, Goldust is in the ring. The Bizarre One begins feeling up Vince McMahon before asking the owner of the WWF if that's an extra microphone in his pocket or is he just happy to see Goldust. Jerry Lawler is dying with laughter as Vince questions Goldust about Goldust's feelings towards Razor Ramon. Are they real feelings or is this all just mind games that will eventually lead to the Intercontinental Championship? Goldust says there's many men out there, but he's very selective, and Goldust wants Razor Ramon badly, more than any man or woman could want a human being. Goldust says that Razor will never forget his name as Vince McMahon looks on in disgust. We go over to Doc Hendricks and Doc says Razor is entering the building. After the commercial break, Razor Ramon makes an appearance. He asks Doc where is Goldust, and Doc snitches and tells the bad bad guy, he's in the locker room. Yeah, segment over, and it's a point for Raw. Whether Goldust was your thing or not, you can't say that his promos weren't effective, especially during this time period. This was the first one that really kicked it into another gear. We've seen the babyfaces bickering over Lex Luger over on Nitro for what seems like an eternity at this point, so yeah, because Raw tried something different, they got a point. Main event time, the WWF presents Isaac Yankem versus The Undertaker, while WCW gives us Hulk Hogan versus Meng of the Dungeon of Doom. The Hulkster has done himself no favours with that promo on Nitro, so let's see if he redeems himself in the main event. Eric Bischoff calls Hulk Hogan the uncrowned king of professional wrestling on commentary as the match gets underway. Meng goes straight for the kill, blindsiding Hulk Hogan and getting the Hulkster on the outside of the ring, where Kevin Sullivan gets in a sneak attack. Back inside the ring, the Hulkster is actually selling. He's taking an early beating here, and it's a shame he couldn't do this last week for the WCW champion, but anyway, at least he's trying. This can only mean one thing though, strap yourselves in and get ready for the Hulk up. Meng chokes Hogan to the floor, allowing the Taskmaster to deliver a mean karate chop to the throat. Meng is still in control as the match goes on. Hogan does mount a small comeback, but the Hulkster gets stopped in his tracks. When Eric Bischoff says that we've seen Hogan come back from beatings like this in the past, Bobby Heenan says that Hogan is the luckiest competitor in the history of this sport for the past 15 years, but his day will eventually come. Bobby Heenan was right. Meng misses a diving headbutt, allowing Hogan to once again build some offense, but the comeback comes to a screeching halt when Meng hits Hogan with a spike behind the referee's back. Meng goes for the pin, Hogan powers out, and he begins hulking up. And as Hogan goes to deliver the big boot and the leg drop, Kevin Sullivan jumps on the ring apron holding the spike. Randy Savage is there to take care of the Taskmaster, making the Mega Powers promo from earlier on even more ridiculous, and Hogan grabs the spike from Kevin Sullivan, hitting Meng in the chest with the international object, and Hogan scores the pinfall win to end Monday Nitro. We go back to Eric Bischoff and company. Eric tells us that Savage will get his WCW Championship match next week on Nitro, as Bobby Heenan tries to make sense of this Hogan and Macho Man relationship. Honestly, it was a disappointing main event this week from Monday Nitro. The Undertaker battles his future brother on Raw as Isaac Yankem DDS tries to put the dead man to rest. Remember, the Taker is going up against Bret the Hitman Hart this Sunday at the Royal Rumble for the WWF Championship. Nobody could have ever imagined that these two would square off at two WrestleMania events. To be fair, it's hard to imagine Glenn Jacobs getting on any big shows with this Isaac Yankem character, but that's just how wrestling is sometimes. This match is quite interesting then for Brothers of Destruction fans. Isaac Yankem needs some words of encouragement from Jerry Lawler after The Undertaker makes his entrance, and when the two men square off, Isaac tries to get a cheap shot in, but the experienced Undertaker sees it coming. Undertaker dominates the early portion of the match, hitting the dentist with some of those signature Undertaker uppercut strikes, followed by a clothesline and body slam. Isaac is able to come back with a clothesline of his own out of the corner as Paul Bearer looks on. Undertaker no-sells it and goes for the tombstone, but Yankem is able to fall out of the ring. The fight spills to the outside, and there's definitely a bit of miscommunication here. The Undertaker keeps looking over his shoulder for a cue or a signal, but nothing happens. The dead man keeps beating Isaac in the same spot on the outside while still looking towards the commentary desk, but there's no movement. Eventually, Taker gets back in the ring, and then Jerry Lawler tries to steal the chain urn being held by Paul Bearer. Lawler ends up running away when Taker goes after him, and yeah, watch this back and you'll see what I mean. It looks like Lawler was late to move here, or Undertaker expected the spot to happen a little earlier. With this distraction, Yankem goes on the offense as we go to commercial break. When we come back, Isaac is doing a number on Taker with a single leg Boston Crab. Doc Hendricks appears via split screen to let us know that Goldust will appear at the end of the show to discuss his match next week with Bret Hart. The Undertaker fights his way out of a bear hug and delivers a side suplex, but Yankem answers with a power slam. Yankem goes to hit the Undertaker Taker with the dead man's own tombstone piledriver, and when Taker goes for the reversal, we get a really bad edit job as we see Doc Hendrix momentarily walking around backstage. When we get back to the ring, Taker hits the tombstone, scoring the victory and scoring a point for Raw. Neither match was great if I'm honest, but the Taker vs Yankem match just seemed a bit more intriguing when compared to another Hogan vs Dungeon of Doom match. To end this broadcast of Raw, Goldust takes an absolute kicking backstage from Razor Ramon during the Bizarre One's planned interview with Doc Hendrix. Goldust buys himself a little time by delivering a low blow and running away from Razor, but he's attacked again when he tries to grab his coat. The fight spills out to the streets and Goldust is eventually able to get away in his car. Clearly, the bad guy didn't share the same love that Goldust had for him. Owen Hart and Marty Jannetty grabbed Raw the first point this week, while Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson secured the second point for Nitro. The Public Enemy vs American Males match was comically bad, while the Ringmaster's debut Raw match was at least a little more competitive. Sting and Ric Flair had a decent TV match that scored them a point, while the WWF failed to entertain with a minute-long tag match, followed by another Billionaire Ted skit. Goldust's promo felt a lot fresher than the Sting, Hogan and Savage interview over on Nitro, so that was an easy point for Raw. Finally, Raw's main event may not have set the world on fire, but like the Goldust promo, it differed greatly from the standard Hulk Hogan formula that's been plaguing Nitro these past few weeks. Raw finally gets another win on Reliving the War, meaning the overall scores are now 5 points to the WWF, 10 points to WCW, and we've had 3 ties. In the television ratings, Nitro won by a mile, scoring a 3.5 against Raw's 2.4, the biggest deficit so far on Reliving the War. Next week on Raw, Goldust wrestles Bret Hart, whether the Hitman's the WWF champion or not, while the Macho Man Randy Savage challenges Ric Flair for the WCW Heavyweight Championship. I'll also cover the 1996 Royal Rumble results as the road to WrestleMania 12 officially kicks off for the World Wrestling Federation. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join me next week. Reliving the War in the Whole Wrestling Bios channel is made possible thanks to my supporters on Patreon. This week's Hall of Famers are Carrie McDonald and Brian Miller. Carrie runs his own YouTube channel named Smart Money, where he gives help to those who are new to personal finance, offering help to pay debts and invest responsibly. And you can find Brian on both Twitch and YouTube under the name I Am The Whiskey. Brian mainly streams Destiny 2, so if that's your thing, go check him out. A big thanks to everyone on Patreon who's been helping me continue to make these videos.